All right, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining me on the Introduction to Meraki MV Security Cameras webinar. My name is Rachel Lowe, and I am the Product Marketing Manager here at Meraki for our security camera line. So I'm very excited to go over these cameras with you. So in today's webinar, we're going to be starting out with a brief overview of Cisco Meraki, who we are, what we do, for those of you who are completely new to Meraki. Then I'll jump into an overview of the MV product philosophy and architecture. Why did we decide to kind of take this new path into the security camera world? We'll go through a product demo, which is going to be sort of the meat of this webinar. Then we'll touch on licensing, we'll go through the other Meraki products in the Meraki portfolio, and finally wrap up with next steps. Before I go any further, I do want to call attention to the fact that my colleague Supalav is here in the room with me today, and he is here to answer any and all questions that you might have as they come up. So please feel free to type any questions you might have into the chat box or the Q&A box, and Supalav will get those answered. I'll also do my best to leave some time at the end of this webinar to answer any other lingering questions that you may have. So a little bit of background on Meraki. We started out in 2006 with just wireless. So our founders were a group of grad students out of MIT, and they were researching mesh wireless deployments. So they were deploying access points on the roofs of buildings all throughout the city of Boston. They were presenting their findings at a conference, and an investor approached them afterwards, said, hey, this sounds like a great company idea, and Meraki was born. So obviously since then we've expanded our offerings beyond just wireless, so we now have switching, network security, SD-WAN, communications, mobility management, and most recently we launched the cameras just about a year ago in October of 2016. So that is our newest product line, but the unifying theme amongst all of our products is that they're an integrated hardware, software, and cloud solution all in one. So all of our engineers sit in-house in San Francisco, and that means that all of our products are designed collaboratively and they're designed to work intelligently with one another. So all of our products also don't require any additional hardware to work. So whether it's an access point or a camera, you don't need any servers or controllers or extra on-prem hardware. You can just plug them in directly to the network and they will just start working. And even though all of our products do work better together and are together, you can buy any of our products individually and they'll work perfectly fine with any other brand of switch, let's say. So you can plug our cameras into another brand of switch and they'll work just fine. We are now a leader in cloud managed networking, which is really exciting. We were acquired by Cisco back in 2012, and we're now among Cisco's fastest growing portfolios. Partnering with Cisco has really allowed us to expand quite rapidly and, as you can see, add more products to our portfolio. But we now have well over 180,000 unique customers, and I believe we actually have over 3 million Meraki network devices online now. So that's kind of mind-boggling, but really exciting as well. So that brings us to the security cameras. We've obviously taken a little bit of a different path here, away from just purely networking, but I kind of want to walk you through what our thought process was there, and hopefully it'll make a lot more sense to you once I do. So when we set out to create this new product, we looked at the security camera world. We sat down with many of our existing customers and asked, what are you looking for from a security camera solution? And for those of you who are familiar with the physical security space and have gone to any sort of physical security trade show recently, you're probably familiar with all of the advertisements, all the marketing that call attention to 7K resolution, 10K resolution, new codecs, those types of things. But across the board, our customers did not ask for those features, those feeds and speeds, so to speak. What everyone asked for was simplicity and ease of use. And we looked at the problem with security cameras with all of the network video recorders that were required, the NVRs or the DVRs, and all of the complexity involved in having multiple software packages required to run your system. And we thought this looks very similar actually to the wireless world before Meraki came onto the scene. So we thought we could apply all of our learnings over the past 10 plus years in distributed computational systems to this new space, this new industry, security cameras, which hasn't really seen much growth in the past, 20 or 30 years, honestly. So we set out to apply our expertise and our learnings to this world and make the user experience better. So one thing that the team is really focused on, and we are still a small team because this is our youngest product, we're really focused on solving problems and not just building features to keep parity with other manufacturers. So as I go through this presentation, as I go through the demo, and as you're typing questions into the chat box, just keep that in mind that, this is still a very new product, but also that some of the problems that you may be facing or some of the features you may be familiar with, those may not be necessary, right? And we may be solving the problems that you're dealing with in a different way. So that's core to our development philosophy and core to the product. So where did all these conversations with all of our customers lead us? We now have two security camera models. We have the MV21, which is our indoor camera. It's been designed for really easy deployment, really quick deployment. And we have our MV71 outdoor camera, which is IK10 rated and IP66 rated, so it is ruggedized. These cameras are the only security cameras from a cloud leader, and that's a really important distinction and a really unique advantage that we have there. Again, if you have been going to those trade shows, you may have seen that cloud is becoming more of a buzzword as it is in the rest of technology. However, these hardware vendors that are trying to move into the cloud space, it's going to be a much, much harder journey for them to build out that infrastructure that's required for an effective and secure cloud architecture than it is for us to go from being a cloud expert to a hardware manufacturer, right? We already manufacture hardware, and to become a camera manufacturer is not that much more difficult. So we have a really unique advantage there, and again, we have a decade of experience of a head start on the competition. Everything, of course, is also managed through the Meraki dashboard, which nobody else has. Nobody else has the full range of products that we have. And the really differentiating factor with these cameras is that we put solid-state storage on board each and every camera. So what that does is it eliminates the error from the equation. And again, across the board, aside from just wanting simplicity, every single one of our customers that we talked to said that they hated their NVR. So we were more than happy to get rid of it by placing the storage on the camera itself. So the first question I always get asked when I mention that we have onboard storage is, how much retention can I expect in terms of days? That's really going to depend on your storage settings, and I'll go through that in the demo. But we do have a suite of optimized retention tools, everything from scheduling to motion-based retention, and those are going to impact the overall retention that you're going to see from your cameras. So if you have the camera set to 24/7 recording, they're just on all the time, you're going to get 20 days of footage 24/7. But if you do enable the motion-based retention tool, you could easily see 90 days plus, depending on the environment that that camera is deployed in. So a quick note that we have at the bottom here is that of all the cameras that we have deployed out in the real world, 95% of those cameras will store at least 30 days with standard image quality. And that 5%, is oftentimes corner cases. So if you have a camera in a lobby with a screen that's on 24/7 and moving 24/7, that's of course going to impact your retention. So what are the real tangible benefits that you gain from putting the storage on the camera, changing the architecture, and getting a camera from a cloud leader? First off, like I mentioned already, you're getting rid of the additional on-prem hardware, so no more NVR. Of course, that means You're going to remove CapEx from the equation, but that also means you're removing a lot of operational expenses. We heard from lots of customers that NVRs were very prone to failure, and the maintenance on those things and the repairs on those things are not cheap. Not to mention that if your NVR fails, you potentially lose footage from 12, 20 cameras, depending on how many cameras your NVR supports, in a single failure event, right? So it places everything at that single point of failure. You're also getting rid of the complexity of those standalone software packages I mentioned. So typically you need a software package just to view the video, and then you need a separate analytics software package in order to run analytics, and you have to go through a very complex, very painful IP configuration process, or you may have to install drive-ins or plugins, and we don't have any of those things. Everything's automated, everything is native in browser, which I'll show you, and so it means that everything is much more streamlined. We're also getting rid of sort of the archaic tools of the past, so you don't have to use DVDs or thumb drives or even VHS anymore to share with whoever needs to see it. You can just export the video directly from the dashboard, directly from the browser, and share that video with whoever needs it. So diving a little deeper into the architecture of the cameras. When you hear cloud and you hear camera, most oftentimes people think of something similar to Nest Cam or Drop Cam. So for those of you who don't know what Nest Cam is, it's a consumer security camera offering from Google. It's a really fantastic camera. It works really well in a home setting. But the problem is that this camera is constantly backing up its video to the cloud. And what that means is it's really eating into your bandwidth. So if you have more than 3 or 5 cameras running in a single location, which most enterprise customers do have, you're easily going to eat up all of your bandwidth for that. So we quickly realized that that wasn't going to be feasible for a lot of our customers, if not most of our customers, and we went back to the drawing board and took a fresh look at the architecture. So what we ended up with is a camera that is recording locally on its local hard drive. If you want to view the video locally, the camera will stream video direct to your computer without using any WAN bandwidth, so you're not going to use any WAN overhead for that. If you're remote and you need to access your videos, you just log into the browser and the video will proxy through the cloud, but the video is not stored in the cloud. So you don't have to worry about your video being stored there in terms of any sort of security concerns. So you will use bandwidth, of course, if you are remote viewing your video, but in most cases, you're not going to be viewing video remote all the time. You're only going to be doing it when you need it. So when the cameras are just sitting and recording and nobody's viewing them, they're going to be using less than 50 kilobit per second of upstream bandwidth per camera. So you may be asking yourself, if the cameras are not streaming video to the cloud, what is that metadata, or what's comprising that 50 kilobit per second? That's a great question. So that is comprised of configuration data, thumbnails, and metadata. So we actually analyze the video onboard the camera. There's a processor, and we'll analyze the video there and then store some of that metadata in the cloud. So again, I'll show you what that looks like in the demo, but we essentially hold on to some motion indexing data that allows us to return really intelligent results very quickly without storing any of your video in the cloud. And you also want to take a minute to talk about the security aspect of these cameras. So those of you that are familiar with Meraki know that we have a security UTM firewall appliance in our lineup. Obviously, security is very important to us as a networking company, so we've taken every to make sure that these cameras are one of, if not the most secure cameras on the market. So there's a few ways that we ensure that. First off, the video is encrypted at rest on the camera's hard drive, so should anybody, in the unlikely event that somebody takes a camera, they won't be able to access your video footage because it's encrypted. Video is also encrypted during transport. The cameras will purchase their own SSL cert as soon as they come online. It's all completely automated, all included with our licensing. And these certs are publicly signed as well, so you don't have to worry about manually purchasing certs and dealing with self-signed certs, which of course are not secure. And then finally, all Meraki data, all Meraki management data is always encrypted across our dashboard, so you don't have to worry about that either. Additionally, since this is a cloud product, of course, that means that we're able to push out security updates to devices should anything arise. So if there is a new security threat that comes up, we're able to address that very quickly. And because you don't have the whole suite of drivers and plugins and software that could potentially be thrown out of sync, you don't have to worry about any of these updates, wreaking havoc on your system. So this is really important in, the modern age of these huge cyber attacks that keep happening. So things like WannaCry and Nyetnya or Petya, whatever they're calling it now. Those types of attacks are, of course, really scary. They also target the NVR and the DVR a lot because those devices are essentially unsecured Windows computers. They're very unloved. Nobody changes the default password on those machines, and so it creates a huge opening into your network, and that's a really fantastic entry point for those types of threats. So these cameras completely remove any of that vulnerability that's present when you do have an NVR or DVR, and we completely remove that from the equation. So I'm going to dive into a product demo now so you can see all of those topics that I touched on illustrated. So we're going to jump over here, and we're just in our Meraki dashboard. I'll show you how I got there. Just go to dashboard.meraki.com. All I have to do, I'm already logged in, so it won't take me to the login page, but I would just log in using my standard login credentials. Now I'm going to go to our cameras page here, click on cameras, and this is going to bring up a list of all of the, this is my home. I'm going to sign out. I'm going to log back into our office network if I can get the right password. This is a real live demo, everybody. If you needed proof, here it is. So I'm going to log into our corporate network here at the office. There we go. That looks better. And I'm going to dive into our cameras page. So what we're looking at here is a list of all of the cameras that are running in our network. So typically, if you've been on one of our wireless webinars, you've seen a page that looks very similar to this, and I'm sure the presenter just breezed on past this page because it's nothing exciting anymore in the networking world. However, in the camera space, this page is extremely valuable and very hard to come by, if not impossible. So what this page is telling us is whether the cameras are online or offline. We also get a connectivity history bar, so you see this little red blip. This camera went offline for some reason at 2:30 yesterday, but came back online a minute later. So we can see at a glance, the connectivity history of these cameras. I can also look at LLDP information, so I can add a column there. And if you do have a Meraki switch, what's really cool is that we see these hyperlinks. You can click into them and actually go directly out to that port on that switch and troubleshoot. So we're going to load up the switch page so we can actually see that this is the port that camera is plugged into, and now we can troubleshoot on the switch. So like I said, the cameras work with any brand of switch, but there are some cool features and functionalities that you only get if you have Meraki switches. Regardless, this network connectivity and LLDP information that you get here is really hard to come by, again, in the secure camera space. We've heard from countless customers, and I continue to hear it every time I talk about this at a trade show or talk to any of our customers. There's a really common experience that IT managers have, which is a camera will go offline, some sort of event is missed, right? There's something that goes missing in the office. The camera doesn't pick it up because it's been offline for 2-3 weeks, and there's no robust way of knowing that camera has been offline. So nobody knows about it until they go to retrieve the video, find out the camera didn't record it, and then it ends up being the IT manager's fault, even though it really isn't the IT manager's fault. So we've heard this time and time again. This is a very common story. It's very hard to tell if your cameras go offline. With the Meraki cameras, you will, of course, get an automated alert sent directly to you, just like the rest of our products. So we have, this networking and in our DNA here at Meraki, and that obviously translates into our cameras as well. So I'm going to jump into our cameras here. And so we can see a cloud icon here. This is indicating that I am remote from this camera. We built this network outside of our normal network just for employee privacy reasons, since we're demoing all the time. So what we're looking at is a construction site where they're building the new Uber office right outside our building. And a couple of things I can do here. I can go back in time. I'm going to go to 8 a.m. Thursday. And this is going to take me back to 8 a.m. Thursday. You can see it was a lot colder outside last week. And you can see that I just use natural language processing to get here, right? So that just means it's going to be easier to navigate. Whoever's operating your cameras doesn't need as much training time to figure out how to get to where they want to get to, which typically is very cumbersome. So again, just applying that those UX learnings that we've gained over the years. Now, I want to know when, when there was a vehicle that passed through this street here. So motion search on that area. I don't get any results, so I'm going to zoom out. Keep zooming out until I do get some results. There we go. And here we go. So very quickly now I can pull up these different results, and we see these blue squares are indicating motion. So in just a second here, we're probably going to see a car drive by. So we're looking at this little FedEx truck up here, and they're probably going to let him through, and he's going to drive by. So I can continue to click on these events, and there we go. The FedEx truck got through the barricade. And this is a great illustration of what I was talking about with that hybrid video processing. So these blue squares, like I said, are indicating motion, and those blue squares are that metadata that's stored in the cloud. So we take that metadata and we overlay it directly on top of the video that's coming from the camera, and now we get this, big picture of what's going on. So I can also export footage from here just by selecting the length of time that I want to export. So we can export, and then we'll get a link that we can either share with whoever needs to see it, or we can download the clip to our computer if we want to save it for longer. I'm going to jump over to a couple of other cameras to show you some of our other functionalities. So let's click on this camera. That loaded up really quickly, but even if I didn't have enough to load up that live feed, for instance, I'd still be able to access these motion heat maps that we have. So I'm going to go to 1 day resolution instead of 1 hour, and I'm going to start a couple weeks ago. So all of this data that you're looking at is showing you relative motion in a given area, and you saw how quickly that loaded up. Each of these tiles is being generated purely from metadata. So we actually don't need the bandwidth required to load up a live stream in order to see these motion heat maps. We've been hearing some great examples of use cases from the field of this, well, others, but one of our favorites is that in Australia, there's an agricultural department that's actually using our cameras and this motion heat mapping tool to monitor sheep behavior patterns out in the fields. And it sounds really silly at first, of course. You're using these cameras to monitor sheep, but it makes a lot of sense, right? The cameras are being deployed out in rural areas where there's probably little to no, connectivity. They're probably running off of 3G, 4G uplinks. And so they don't care about the live video, but they do want an at-a-glance view of where the sheep are grazing, where they're resting, where they're getting water, things like that, and when. So they can get a really great high-level overview of that activity without needing a lot of bandwidth, and that's exactly what they're doing. So you can see, for instance, that on October 17th, there was a lot of commotion out there on the balcony. There must have been, it must have been a really warm day out there. But you can see on Sunday, for instance, there was hardly any motion because hopefully people aren't coming to the office on Sunday. So from here, I'm going to show you our motion-based retention tools that I was talking about. So first off, we can schedule our cameras if we want to. So you can see that there's some schedules already built out here. But let's say I want to create a new schedule. All I have to do is rename this, can't spell today, test schedule. And I can just drag and drop these little indicators here. I can also add multiple time periods in a given day, so I can get really specific about when I want these cameras on and off. If we wanted to, we could also delete all of these recording periods and have the cameras only live stream. So this has been really popular with some of our healthcare customers who have privacy restrictions around recording data. So you can do that as well. I'm going to remove this and turn it back to always. And now I'm going to enable motion-based retention. So motion-based retention is different than the typical motion-based recording that you may be familiar with. What happens with recording is that the camera will turn on or off based on whether it sees motion. Now this is, somewhat useful, but there's certain use cases where it really comes up short. So for instance, we had a customer who was using an older system with motion-based recording. They had their sprinkler system go off in the middle of the night, and the motion from those little droplets was not enough to trigger their motion sensor. So they came back to a very soggy office, had no idea what triggered the sprinklers to go off, and that was that. So knowing that there's no 100% foolproof motion detection system, what we've done is we've made our system more intelligent. So the cameras are going to record 24/7. They're going to store the most recent 3 days in their entirety, right? So if you do have a break-in or there is a sprinkler issue or something happens, right, you'll have all of the footage from the last 3 days so that you can go through that video and make sure that you see everything. After that initial 3 days, our software is going to intelligently trim out the segments of video that contain no motion. So you're going to get the advantage of having that sort of motion-based recording tool, but also having this extra security period where you get all of your footage. So what's really cool is we have this tool at the bottom here that's showing us a live readout of the actual retention we can expect from this specific camera. So this is real data. This camera only sees about 1 to 2 hours of motion per day. So we're easily going to get 90+ days of estimated retention. Now, if I switch to this camera, which is looking at a street right here where we see a lot of traffic, and we go to settings, and I turn on motion-based retention, you'll see that that data changed, right? So that's your sort of proof that this is real data. We are now seeing an average of 13 hours per day on this camera, which translates to 25 days of estimated retention. Now, if I toggle to standard recording quality, we're going to get 37 days. So it's really quick and it's really easy to understand how much retention you can expect from a specific camera deployment. For those who have locations based in the Europe region, we know there's other very strict requirements there as well. So while in the US we kept hearing, we need more and more retention, in Europe we kept hearing we need less retention. So we also have a tool that allows you to forcibly dump video after a given period of time. So if you can only store footage, let's say for 5 days, you can set that and the camera will dump footage after 5 days. Cancel that. Now I'm going to go over to our administration page, some of our administrative tools. So we know that those who are looking after your network are not always the ones who are going to be looking after your cameras. So we've built camera-only administrative tools as well. So to do this, all I have to do is create a new user. We'll say Jim and jim@email.com. And let's say Jim works at a university bookstore. So we don't want Jim to have access to all of the university cameras, but we do want him to have access to his store location. So what we'll say is he can view any footage but not export, and we'll say cameras by tag, and we'll say bookstore cameras. This tag obviously does not exist in our system, but it's really easy to set up, and then we would have all of the cameras that have that tag on them now available to Jim for viewing. So it's very easy to get set up. It's also a really fantastic tool for giving access to first responders. So typically with other systems, in order to access cameras remotely, if at all possible, you'll need to set up a VPN. Again, you'll need to install your complicated software, and it takes a really long time to do so. With this tool, you can get somebody on the dashboard in a matter of minutes. So that means first responders only need an internet access in order to view video footage remotely. And then you can remove access as soon as the active scenario is over. So, one thing I did forget to show you is our video wall tool as well. So if you want to view multiple video feeds at one time, very simple to do. You can see we have these tabs running across the top here. These are all different video walls that we've built out. Now, if I want to edit my video walls, all I have to do is hit edit, and then I can just add video feeds to my video wall, resize by dragging and dropping. It's all, again, very intuitive, meaning less training time for you and your staff. And we can move these around, and then we'd hit save. Oh, my computer just refreshed. And then we'd hit save, and we'd have a new video wall. So what's nice is if you have like a command center on site and you want to be able to view video feeds all the time, and you want to look at more than one video wall at one time, all you have to do is open multiple tabs in your browser, because we're just using a standard browser. There's no magic there, and there's no extra software required there. So jumping back to our slides here, I'm going to wrap up and leave some time for Q&A. So recapping on some of our features, we do have our motion search tool, which allows you to really easily go back in time and kind of look for something that may have gone missing. We have our built-in analytics tool, so motion heat mapping, and I'll touch on this more in a bit, but those analytics tools are really sort of the future of where we see this camera going as we continue development. And then we have our granular access controls that allow you to limit who can see which video feeds. We have our optimized retention tools as well, so scheduled recording, which allows you to control when the cameras are recording, when they're not recording, as well as change your cameras to live view only. We have motion-based retention, which is more intelligent than motion-based recording and allows you to optimize storage time while also retaining really important footage that you may need. I want to call attention to the fact that even though our dashboard has been around for 10 plus years, and even though many of you who are watching this webinar are very familiar with our dashboard is a really powerful tool, and it's something that doesn't exist with other manufacturers and other camera vendors. So our dashboard has gone through many iterations and has a lot of really, really useful tools built right into it that are going to apply to your cameras as well. So things like two-factor auth, local time zones, automatic firmware upgrades, offline device alerting, connectivity history, and network insights, those things are standard. Those things come with your cameras, and you don't have to configure anything. So our dashboard, is a better tool for managing your cameras. It's designed to be that way, and it will continue to be that way as we continue developing. So since this is a new product, we often get lots of questions about roadmap. Where are we going next? What form factors next? What features are next? So I wanted to give you a little bit of insight into how we're making our decisions for this product line. We have three main principles that we follow. So the first is cost reduction through architectural simplification. That's things like removing the NVR from the equation, immediately removing some CapEx and OpEx. Operational simplification through automation, things like offline device alerting that really save you time and energy. And also things like, the cameras automatically purchasing their own certs. Business value through intelligence, and that's what I touched on earlier. Those analytics tools that obviously provide a lot more insight than just security. Those are the tools that we're really keen on expanding and, providing more of that business value to our customers in the future. For those who are new to Meraki and aren't familiar with our licensing model, it's really simple. It's just one license to each hardware, each piece of hardware that you purchase. There's a 3-year hardware warranty on models, and our license also comes with any and all software updates for new features and bug fixes, as well as 24/7 end customer support with our in-house support team. That is really awesome. I've never heard of customers, being excited about interacting with the support team before, but we often hear that from our customers. So it's a really, really fantastic support team. In terms of the rest of our products and the rest of the Meraki full stack, we do, of course, have our access points, the MR line. We have our MX security appliances and SD-WAN, MS Ethernet switches, Systems Manager, which is our mobility management tool, MC is our communications line, and, of course, MV security cameras. So this is a complete cloud-managed IT portfolio. It's a single pane of glass. All of these products can be managed in that same dashboard that I was showing you. And again, this is, we're really the only company out there that has this type of product offering. In terms of next steps, if you want to do a risk-free evaluation, please check out meraki.cisco.com/eval. This is a really fantastic way to get your hands on some cameras, run a proof of concept, see if they're a good fit for you and your organization. You can learn more on our website and blog. This is where we you can learn more about new feature updates as well as new product releases. And, of course, I encourage you to get in touch with your Meraki sales rep who can provide you additional information or get you set up with that risk-free evaluation if you're interested in that. If you want to learn about any of our other products, we have a bunch of free webinars that cover all of our products, all of our other products. Thank you so much for joining the webinar today. I hope it was useful, and have a great rest of your Tuesday.